Hello, everyone. Good evening from Lagos, Nigeria. This is Oluwatosin. I'm a game developer and also a co-founder. As we all know, Global Game Jam is starting today, and the theme was recently announced. It's the theme of Global Game Jam for this year is Lost and Found. Quickly, I'll be introducing us to using Buildbox for game jams. So let's just get started. What is Buildbox? Buildbox is a no-code solution for building games, basically. With Buildbox, you can build a full game without having to write a single line of code, which is quite interesting. This really helps with rapid prototyping because once you can eliminate the writing code aspect, it reduces the time which you use to complete the game. We've had amazing games created with Buildbox already. Color Switch, which has over 300 million downloads across various app stores, was built with Buildbox. And we have a lot of games on Apple's top 50 games being built with Buildbox. So it's quite interesting. Buildbox generally is a very interesting tool to make use of. Moving on to game jams. The reason why I would suggest you use Buildbox for game jams generally is because it helps you quickly finish what you started. Because when you're building games for game jams, sometimes it can be a whole lot of stress when you have so many things to do, and the game jam is just 3 days. So we have very little time to work on the game. So with Buildbox, you can easily get started and work on something. So let's just dive straight into Buildbox. Here is the Buildbox interface. If you want to get Buildbox, you can get it from www.buildbox.com. They have a free version that you can make use of, although they are paid versions, but with the free version, you should be able to build something basic. All right, so here we have the welcome screen, and to my left, we have a panel that has the latest news and access to the videos on Buildbox's YouTube as well, and news. Then on the upper left panel, we have where you can create a new project and open a new project. And also the main panel here where you have the templates, you have tutorials, and you have the update. So these three tabs here, with the updates, you can always update your Buildbox. Then you have tutorials. The amazing Buildbox tutorials that can easily help you get started no matter the level you are. So it's easy to get started with. So there are various tutorials you could get started with here, and you have templates. This is the interesting part about Buildbox. It provides templates for you to use to get started. Let's say you have a game you want to build, and if you go through the template, you have like something related to it already. You could just get started with that template and start remixing, and that way it creates a whole new game for you. So that's quite interesting. So let's dive into checking out something. So if you hover on this template here, it shows you basically what that template looks like, as you can see here. So it's quite easy to get started with and use. So I would say let's start with this isometric platformer. Let's try to open it up. Cool. So let's talk about the first layer of whatever game you're building with Buildbox. The first layer you see is your mind map. So basically, the mind map is like the bird's eye view of your game, whereby you get to see everything happening in your game from start to finish. As you can see here, in our mind map, we have the start node, the start UI, the 3D world, the game UI, and the game over node. So if you look at this, you can see like everything connecting to each other. That means when your game launches, it starts from this start node. Then from there, it moves to the start UI, and from the start UI, you can move to your 3D world, and from the 3D world, you can move to your game UI, and from your game UI, the game over UI. So let's get started with the second layer of our game making process. This is the first layer. That's the whole mind map. Then the next layer is our worlds and UI. Starting from the start UI, this is just a template, so it has this flat template. Now you can always quickly preview what you are working on with Buildbox. It has this preview button here where you can always use it to preview what you are working on. I'm not so sure you can see the preview yet. It's in another window. So let me try to see if I can share that again. So yeah, that's like the preview. Sorry, that's like the preview window. From here, you can just see how the game looks like. So you have like these templates that you can work with already. So the next thing is to start tweaking it to suit what you want to do. So yeah, that's previewing your game. Okay, so let me just go ahead back to our cool. All right then. So with this is a UI. From here, you could always change the icons, your background, and with this, you could totally create something entirely new here. From here, you could like edit this background and change it to whatever you want. Then you could also change these icons as well. So moving from that, if we go back to the mind map, it like shows you everything in your game again. So from the mind map, you can navigate to any part of your game. So let's go to the 3D world, which the tab is also open here. So from here, we have this world space where we can build our levels, create whatever we want, however we want. And if you look to the far left, we have a characters hierarchy here. You also have objects that are inside your scene, this particular scene. And if you look closely after that panel, you would see the main objects are actually inside this your scene. So you could have multiple scenes, multiple levels basically in this particular build box. If you look down here, we have start, you have your first level, second level, third level, fourth level. And the way it works, it makes it so seamless that once you are switching between these levels, it's not noticeable to the eyes. If you remember when we were playing the game previously, you were seeing these different levels, but it wasn't noticeable to the eyes that they were not in the same place. So which is quite cool, I would say. What's responsible for that is basically this start and end, this start and end objects here. So your game it starts looking at your scene from this start node here, and it stops at this end node here, exactly. And that's your start node there. So from this end node here, it moves to the start node of the other scene. So that's how we transition smoothly from one scene to the other. Then yes, our third layer is going to be something called our node map. So this is the third layer of Buildbox generally. So from here, you could control the behavior of your characters in your world space, in your scene. From here, if you look at this now, we have different nodes. from here you have, from this leftmost panel here, we have so many nodes that we could always play around with and toy with here. So there are so many of them, about 100 or so. We have so many here that you could always play around with. And also you can always create your own nodes and edit. So for example, our character now has a 3D model attached to it. We could always play around with this 3D model and see what we can do. We could always change the color to whatever we want. Let's give it a white. Now let's say, for example, you want to add a new model to this current character. You could go to content and drag out a 3D model node. Then from here, we could edit the mesh of the 3D model. So basically, the mesh is just the 3D structure of a particular object, basically, like the basic 3D structure of the object. You have cubes, you have primitive meshes like your cubes, your sphere, your cylinder, and the likes. So let's make use of, let's say we want to give that sphere a cap. Let's look at this. Let's see, we have this pyramid mesh here. So this is quite big. Let's try to reduce. So let's give this 0.5. So it still feels too big. Let's try to reduce the height. Okay. Then let's just drag the y-axis. That's the height of the pyramid up. And let's see it go up a little bit more. So if you look at this, it looks like it has a cap on it, right? Then from here, we could just change like the color of the cap. Now, if we go back to our 3D world, you can see that our character is looking different already with like this little cap on it. So let's go back to the node map here. If we continue with this, one other thing we can do is go to the start and ensure that we still give it a collision shape, then remove the rotation factor. So when this sphere is rolling, the cap doesn't roll along with it. So from this, we can, let me see. Connect the start nodes to this 3D model, because if we don't, that particular model would not, it will still be invincible in our preview by the time we preview it. So let's try to preview this now and see how it looks like. Let's see. So yeah, I hope you can see that now. So you can see that our character already looks different from what we had before. And from this, little by little, we can start editing this old template into something which we really, really do want. So those are like the basic layers that you need to get to know when you're starting out with Buildbox. Those are from the mind map to the world and the UI, then from the world and UI to the node map. Those are the basic 3 layers you need to understand as to how Buildbox works. And there is a 4th layer, which is quite interesting. Although Buildbox is said to be a no-code engine, it also provides the options for developers who want to explore more with the ability to create their own nodes and write some JavaScript programs. So let me just show us that. Cool. So if we go to our node map, if you click on this basic nodes here, you can like see this 4th layer here. So from here, you could always add different things to your nodes depending on how you want to go about it. So this is like the fourth layer, but it is for people who are interested in actually writing codes for their nodes. So it's not something you always need. You can always build your games without it, but if you want to do more and explore more, you could make use of the codes here. Good. So with this, we have access to like our start UI, our characters, and our what, the three main layers. Then if you are finding things difficult to understand when you get started, after playing around, there are two major manuals that would help you and guide you. One is the Buildbox documentation, which has basically everything about Buildbox that you need to know, and also the JavaScript API reference. That's for people who want to write codes using the node maps and JavaScript. So you have the API references there for you to toy around with. So yeah. Now let's go back to our world scene here and see things that we can play with. We have something called the assets library. So in this assets library, you have your primitive shapes. That's like the cube, the cylinders, the spheres, and the likes. And you have smart assets. So what smart assets are basically things that can help you. They are models that can help you get started with building easily. Like here you have atom point, you have like a point, you have coins here. So what smart assets are really is your normal assets, your primitive assets here, with a little bit of modifications. That means these smart assets contain different nodes that make them smart. So let me add a smart asset to our scene and let us see how it works. So if you can see this now, this is like a preview of what this particular smart asset is. So if we add this to our library, let's look for something else to add to our library. This is an asset that starts rotating when a character asset approaches it. Good. So let's add this to our library too. So if you look at the leftmost panel here, you can see it already. Then we have normal assets that we can always make use of. So these are different assets that we can always make use of. So cool. So let's go back to our scene. Let's go back to our scene. Let's see, from here, we could bring in, let's say this protocube and try to like add it to our scene here. Yeah, it might look too big. Now, before I continue, let me introduce us to our transform tools, basically. So we have the move tool, which is used to translate your 3D objects across your scene onto X, Y, and Z axis. And if you look at the right-hand side here, immediately I'm moving it across this red colored arrow here. You can see it move across our X axis. Then across the Y axis, you can see it move. That's if you look at the right here. Then for the Z axis too, you can see it move like this. So yeah, that's like our move tool. Then we have the rotate tool also. So you can use it to rotate this object about any axis that you want to, basically. So yeah. Then also we have our scale tool, which I just used earlier. You can use it to scale across different axes. Then you can also scale uniformly from the center. You can also scale uniformly from the center. So let's try to reduce this. Let's change back to our move tool. So we could just bring this down here. Okay. So let's try to preview it and see what happens. One way by which you can preview just one level, we have various levels here already that were set up, and you can always create more with this button here that says add level. So you can always create more and more levels. So with this that we have set up here, let's try to like preview it and see what it actually looks like. One thing you can do here is to preview just this scene. Just type S on your keyboard. Once you click S on your keyboard, it makes it solo. So it only goes through this particular level. So let's preview that. Okay. So yeah, once we click on this now, oh, sorry about that. Can you see? So immediately your character approaches that particular smart asset, it tries to like move away. So those are some cool effects that we can always have using our smart assets. So with this, we are starting, I believe we should start to get the idea of how basic these things are. We can actually work with it to create something interesting. So it just depends on your level of creativity. So all right, then let's get back to Buildbox itself. All right, then. So that's that about smart assets. There are various smart assets that you can work with, like we saw in the asset library already. So you can always store around with the various smart assets here. Before we move on, let me just switch this back from solo to yeah. Cool. So let's look at this particular smart asset. What does it really contain? So if we go to our node map, we can see that it's not just a 3D model. It has this wake up model and this rotate model. So what this wake up model does is it just looks, it checks out for the character. Once the character is closer to the model, it just rotates. That's what happens. Immediately it awakes. If you look at the node here, so when it's enabled, once the distance between the character and this particular object is about 200, it awakes the rotate node and what the cube rotates, basically. So if we go back to that's our world, our asset library, and we bring in just a basic shape like this. Let's see, add to library. This cube here, and we click on it, you would see that it just has a 3D model. So that shows you that this one is just quite basic. It's just a cube, a primitive with a 3D model. But what makes a smart asset smart is the fact that it has nodes that are attached to it that gives it this form of behavior. So that is that about smart assets and normal assets. So we could always look at various templates. So there is another template I would like to show us here that we can always work with. So let me just go back to yeah. So we have this Martian marathon here. So no, I'm not going to save that. So while we wait before it downloads, if you have any questions about it, feel free to ask them. Yes, okay, we have a question here that says, can I bring in custom assets? Definitely, you can always bring in custom assets. With Buildbox 3, you can bring in your sprite, your FBX files for 3D objects, as well as your OBJ files. You can bring in your text, your images, your sprites, and so on, depending on what you want to do. So yes, you can bring in custom assets. So moving on, we have our template loaded up already. So if I preview this for us. Let me see. So this is like a basic UI. I say swipe left or right to dodge obstacles, swipe up and down to avoid enemies. Then you have this, then you have a basic play button. Then from here, you can do, so it has this Subway Surfers type of feel. And you can see that's like a basic UI and it's something that we can easily get started with. So if you look at this, it feels like a fully fleshed out game already that you can work with. But now let's just dive into the various layers that makes up this template. So yeah, starting from the first layer, which is the mind map. So from the mind map, you can see from the start node, you have the first tutorial, which is this UI here that says swipe left or right to dodge obstacles. Then if you notice, we have this highlighted image here. It is basically the navigation button. Here it is, the navigation button. So that means then once you click on anywhere on this is it here. Once you click on anywhere on this, it takes you to what? It takes you to the next. It takes you to the next UI. So once you click on that navigation button, it takes you to the next UI. All right then. So if we move on, if we move back to our mind map, we have the other UI here, which is the swipe up or down to avoid enemies. And from here to we have the navigation button that takes us to the next UI. So let me close this. Then from here we have the start node. We have the start node. Then from here we have our 3D world. So let me open up our 3D world. Then we have various assets that make up our 3D world. If you look to the left side, you can see like the various assets that were imported to be used in our scene. And if you look down here, you have scene 1. This is what scene 1 looks like. Then from here, you have scene 2, or more like level 2, level 3, level 4. So you could always add more levels and create different UI. But since you have something already here, you could just delete this. Yes, and just duplicate this by clicking D on your keyboard, and you could just rename this to 5. Then with this, you have 2 similar levels. Then from here, you can start editing. Let's say you want to move this over here, or rather still have this guy move here. I kind of like have this weird setting here. Exactly. So with this, you can start editing the levels and moving. You could duplicate this. This would be basically unplayable. So that means if you can't climb up here, you cannot move forward. All right then. So with this, you can do a lot of level design. Like I did here now. To duplicate this, just click on the object, and depending on the direction to which you want to duplicate it, you could either use A, that's to the left, that's pressing Ctrl Z. Then you could do D, click on it and do D. You can duplicate it to the right, and if you continue like that, continues duplicating it. So that makes it easier for you if you want to like quickly build out your levels. So it's very, very easy to duplicate here. So let me just undo this. Then if you want to duplicate up, you can see with the W key, you can duplicate up, like stacked on each other. Then once you click on it again, you can duplicate down. So if you look down like this, you can see it duplicated there already. Yeah. So with that, you can build basically anything you want. So if we dig deep again into our node maps, Now, our player has so many node maps here. It just shows how interesting this gets, because once you have things like this, although this is more advanced, I would say you start out with basic ones. So you can always add various nodes to your characters. We have a bunch of nodes here that make things easy, even for movement. Let's say you have a character and you want it to jump. All you can just do is add a jump node to that particular character, and it begins to jump. So with this, I believe it gives us this idea of what Buildbox can do and how interesting Buildbox is. With as little as this, you can get started with like building out your own games already and creating your own custom levels. Then another template I would like to share with us before we end this is this adventure template. I kind of have a feeling that this template is going to really come in handy for Global Game Jams theme this year, because the theme is lost and found, and this basic adventure template here kind of depicts that already. So what we have here is a basic 3D environment with walls, pillars, and various 3D assets. So you have those basic 3D assets here. So I would like to talk about colliders and okay, sorry about that. First things first, our colliders. This just shows the different colliders in our scene. So colliders are basically the way the physics in our scene interacts with each other, how objects actually interact with each other and all. So we have various shapes for various objects, like you have the sphere colliders, you have box colliders, depending on the object you are making use of. That's the collider you would use. We also have our camera view. So what this camera view is basically how it would look like on the user screen. That's what this camera view is. If we zoom in on this camera view, that's how it will show on our preview window. So the thing is, when you are working with the camera activated like this, always ensure that that's what you want the user to see, so you don't make mistakes when you are working on things like this. So always switch this off once you are done with that, and you can go back to like your main scene and continue navigating around. So with this, let me try to preview this so we can see how interesting this particular template is as to that lost and found theme. So let me preview this. Okay. So yeah, we have our character that can move around. So you can see how we have this already, and you can see like these colliders. That shows you the physics system in the game already. And if you remember, we had a collider here, although the mesh of that particular object is not presented, but the collider ensures that this character does not move out from here. And once we get closer to this door, we can see that we can't get there. What do we need? We need a key to open that door, right? And that key is somewhere here. Although we have plenty of things blocking the key right now. So let's try to, yeah, we got the key. So now the door opens, and from there, we can move to the next level. So that's like basically what we can be doing with Buildbox. I feel like this template is really, really going to come in handy with building amazing stuff for this particular theme, the lost and found theme. So one other thing we can do is try to zoom in the camera and see how that would work for us. Okay, let's click back on our camera and try to like zoom in like this. And let's see how it will look like now. Okay. Now, can we see how different it looks now? So it already creates this different feel already to the game. So it looks different from how we had it before. So let's go and get the keys now. And now we can like, now we are blocked everywhere. Yeah. Cool. So our character can move out now. Awesome. So I would like to entertain questions from anyone. If there is something you saw and you'd like to know more about, you can always reach me. You could always reach me. I'll drop my email in the comment section. You could always reach me. I believe with this, we have like a basic knowledge as to how we can go about using Buildbox for game jams. And one thing I would say is don't limit your creativity. You could do various things with scene designs and so much more. So we could also create a project from scratch. I know we've been looking at templates since we started. We could also create projects from scratch. Instead of making use of templates, you could like start your own project from fresh. So from here, you could create a new project, an entirely new project. So let's see, let's create an empty project. Now, it shows us our first layer, which is what our mind map. So from our mind map, we can always now navigate to other things. As you can see here, we don't have any UI, we don't have anything because this is just empty. This is just our basic empty world. So if we open up our 2D world, this is our start and this is our end. That means if we are going to be looking at our game, this is going to be the start for this scene and this is going to be the end. So what we can do here is, let's see, let's try to create, let's import basic shapes. Let's see, let's bring in this rectangle shape. And here we can make it our character. And let's call it character and change the collision group of this rectangle. Then also we can bring in let's bring in another rectangle. Okay, I use this as our platform here. So let's rename this to player. And we have this rectangle here too. And let's call this platform. So yeah, we could bring in our platform and try to create something entirely new. But let's see if we can have a project in a landscape format instead. So let's see, we could make use of our tools here. This is like the rotate tool. So let's set this as -90. We can move it here. Let's set this to, let's say -12. And 0, then we can click on this tool and try to rotate it to 90. -90. Then let's set this to about 12. Just so it matches let's start. So now our camera looks different. So one thing we can always do is go to our settings, and from your project settings, okay, don't know if you can see this other window. Okay, let me share again. So yeah, from our project settings, you can give your game an icon, and from there you can also set the type of layout you want, then the various things that you want, the target devices and all. Then click OK. So let's go back to this and open up our 2D world. Now you can see that our camera has changed from portrait to like landscape. So yeah, we could just zoom this in a little. And here's our camera. Good. So with this, we can like use this to create a platform kind of thing here. And we could just duplicate this. Something like this, then also duplicate it downwards again and try to like create this basic level here. Cool. Then let's bring in our player. I'll make our player quite tiny. And if we go to our players node, it only has this added to it. Then what we can do now is add controls to it. So we can say enable this, and when it is pressed, what do we want to do? We want our character to, let's say, jump. I want it to jump. Let's give it a jump limit of 1. So once we touch our distance, we want our character to jump. So what we can do is try to preview this. Now you can see that our character is just falling through, right? Now that's because we don't have a physics set for our character yet. So what we can do, oh, sorry, I'm very sure you people did not see that because our preview isn't here. Let me just try to preview that for us. Sorry, preview. Okay, so here we go. After our character just fell through the platform. So let me show that again. It just fell through the platform. So what we can do here is set the physics of our character and our platform as well. So we would set our platform to static basically and make our player dynamic. Yep. So let's see what it looks like now. So share. Okay, sorry. So if we restart this now, we can see that our character is fully balancing on this. Then one thing we can do again is go back to our node map of the player. Then we can tell it to what, like move. Then we'll tell it to move in a particular direction. So it should basically be in the X direction. So if we go back to the move node here, we can tell it to move with a speed of, let's say, 1, and let's set this to 0. And let's try to preview it. Sorry. So yeah, with this already, we have our character moving already. Even if we didn't have to write any code at all, we already have our characters moving already. So with this, we can always create different modes. We can always create different nodes, create different scenes, and with the templates especially, we can work so fast because it makes everything so fast instead of having to build your whole entire scene from scratch. If you see a template that looks something close to what you want to do, then just go for it and get started. So if you have any questions, you can always shoot me a mail. I'm ready to respond. So I would like to say do have a great game jam, have enough rest, don't stress yourself too much. Just do what you can do. The time might be short, but just try to do what you can do and don't get stressed out. And yeah, have a lovely game jam. So thank you all, everyone. I hope to see games that you build with Buildbox. Thank you so much. Bye.